Hi, I'm Arijit Banerjee. I head the media team for GBM, and I'm in the newsroom in Gurgaon. Very interestingly, important event happened today. That was the presentation of the union budget. Everybody was looking forward to this budget because this comes just a month after demonetization in India, which had a huge impact on individuals, consumers, as well as on companies in a very negative manner. So there was an expectation that the budget will talk about economic revival, will talk about ease of doing business, and will give some relief to the people who have gone through the whole trouble of demonetization over the last few months. So if you look at the budget this time, it's no different. Though there are no big bang reforms, there are no big bang announcements, but a lot of small steps have been taken by the government to bring back economic revival, to boost growth, and also to have to give basically more money in the hands of consumers. If you look at it, the budget was divided into different aspects, and a huge focus was on rural area. Remember, almost 60% of the country, or in fact more than 60% of the country, is in rural areas, and the government has been focusing on increasing expenditure in rural areas. That of course would mean that that rural people would have more incomes, a huge boost for FMCG companies, companies in the agriculture sector, companies that deal with rural economy, agrarian economy, for example tractor makers, seed makers, and also the FMCG companies which sell in rural areas. They would be big beneficiaries of this move. So there is a huge emphasis on remonetization in the budget, on digital payments, and also on housing, as I said, because the government has an aim of housing for all. So the affordable housing segment has got a huge amount of boost in terms of tax benefits, in terms of lending to that area. Then the other big focus has been infrastructure and social sector. One fact about this year's budget, there is no separate railway budget, so the railway budget was also included in this year's budget. So a lot of announcements in terms of boosting infrastructure and safety for railways was announced in this budget. A huge spending increase on roads, and also modernization of airports were the focus areas. Apart from that, there was also a huge focus, as I said, on digital payments, getting digital payment solutions onto rural areas, onto banks, and getting more and more people to actually make digital payments. Coming of course to a very important announcement which is on two areas. One is the taxation area, where there has been a increase in the taxation benefits for individuals. So from 2.5 lakhs to 5 lakhs, people now will have to pay only 5% tax. This is half of what they were paying earlier, that is 10% tax. This will also benefit others as well, as what will happen is that when the final tax is calculated, the government estimates that each and every individual will at least benefit by about 12,500 rupees. So that is going to be a benefit which will accrue to almost all individuals. The government feels that this extra money in the hands of consumers will be used for spending. Also some amount of benefit in terms of small enterprises. The tax rate on them has been brought down. The government had promised to bring down the corporate tax rate on companies. That hasn't happened. The government has, however, promised that that is something that could happen next year. Then apart from this, also on the again on the taxation front, the government is looking at restricting your cash payments. So any payment above 3 lakh rupees will not be allowed. The startups will get a lot of tax benefits to give a boost to sales of houses. The long-term capital gains period for availing a benefit on a long-term capital gains benefit on housing, the tenure for that has also been reduced. Very interesting move, and a much needed move has been also the reform in political funding, which has been brought about now. So the donations to political parties can only be made in cash up to rupees 2,000, which is a minuscule amount. Any funding beyond that will need to be done either through a check or a digital payment. Apart from that, the government is also looking at bringing out electoral bonds, which people can buy, again using check or digital payments for funding of political parties. So that which has been a big reason for corruption, which is political corruption, the government expects that also to actually be cleaned up by this action of the government. So in and all, a lot of moves no big bang measures specifically for the manufacturing sector, no big bang announcements in terms of the reform in direct and indirect taxes, which is taxes, indirect taxes which are paid by companies. Probably the reason for that is the GST is just round the corner. So the budget did announce that the government expects a final solution to be in place in terms of GST, and after a few months the government expects GST to roll out, and that's why there were no major announcement in terms of tax changes. That's all from me.